It's our superpower.
Yeah.
We don't even need, you don't need just to say it's a superpower. You need to understand why it's a superpower.
Yeah.
And so we still need to do that work.
Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah, the DEI consultant of Amplify DEI. Today we'll shine a light on the new season of Cooking Back to Our Roots. We are embarking on an enlightening journey, delving deep into the significant influence of the Dutch slavery history on the African diaspora in the Netherlands. As we navigate through our culinary adventures, we incorporate the profound Adinkra symbol Sankofa, using lessons from the past as stepping stones to a better future. Join us as we unravel how history and culture have shaped our food traditions, and embracing our past can enhance our future. Cooking Back to Our Roots isn't just about food. It's about connecting our roots and cultivating a deeper appreciation for our shared heritage. The region we are focusing on today is West Africa. Dr. Marcia Goddard is a neuroscientist focused on building bridges between science and business. Her expertise is brain behavior relationships in high-performance environments. She supports organizations in building sustainable and high-performance cultures, focusing specifically on mental health, well-being, and DEI. Marcia is also the founder of Brain Matters Consulting and Contentment for Business. Kemo Camara is a social entrepreneur, community influencer, and the visionary behind OMEC, which is a new way for the community. OMEC is about connecting and championing biculturals of African descent. Kemo is driven by passion for unlocking our human potential and empowering individuals to achieve extraordinary feats. He facilitates collaboration among diverse backgrounds, leveraging unique perspectives, skills, and experiences to drive transformative change toward a common goal. Welcome, Marcia and Kemo, to Cooking Back to Our Roots. And I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your roots. So could you share something about your roots?
Yeah, so my roots are half of them are in the Netherlands. My mom is from a tiny town called Enkhuizen in the Netherlands, and my dad is from Trinidad and Tobago, so a proud Black man from the Caribbean.
Interesting. And Kemo?
I'm originally from Guinea, born, I usually say I spent half of my life there, and the other half in the West, in US, where I went for my school and my professional career, so that's part of me too. So yeah, I'm half from the US, not half actually. I'm 100% from Guinea and 100% from the US. And I've been now in Europe for 8 years, you know, half of that in Germany and half in the Netherlands here. So I also have that side of me.
Yeah, and I asked you if you would be a guest speaker the show for Cooking Back. Why did you say yes to Cooking Back to Our Roots?
Because if I say no, you would not take a no for an answer.
That's true. That's true.
I would. Yeah, that was no option. But yeah, that's the sister and brother part of it. Yeah. But yeah, I think I was so excited actually when I hear you got this right. So like really congratulating you on that. But I think we don't have this kind of conversation a lot. Right, in the community, and we need to normalize it. We need to have more and more and more of this. Yeah. And so did I actually force you to say I'm going to be on your show?
No, I invited you.
You invited me. Okay.
Well, I told you that you have to come.
Yeah.
So
okay. So I was going to be on it anyway. Yeah. So I'm glad you invited me. But because this kind of thing excites me, like we need to have more of this. So that's why I'm like really not only proud of you, but like happy that you invited me to be on it. So I'm happy to be here.
What is the part of this that you're missing in the Netherlands or in general?
I think in general, what I realize, especially for me being in the community building space, I think we, as a people of African descent, collectivism, community is a part of our DNA. That's part of our culture, right? It's not, we live in the society where individualism is a part of the society here, but collectivism is a part of our culture, a part of who we are. And so living here and balancing this bicultural identity that we have of being a Westerner, but also having like an African descent, that root, we have now always tended to like really double down on our community part, the collective in part, and especially this younger generation, right? How do we bring that back? How do we normalize that, right? Those kind of, for me, that's what is important. For me, that's what I'm like, we need to have so much conversation like this. We need to open this space. We need to like, so that will lead to more people coming together, us talking about who we are, our cultural identity, and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, love that. And Marcia, what about you?
Well, similar. As in, I really wanted to be part of this, and I'm happy that you invited me, because for me, my roots, sometimes I felt many times in my life that I really didn't belong anywhere. I cognitively know that my roots are in Africa. I have no idea where. So my identity and my roots are, it's a sensitive subject to me, but I find it really fascinating. And I've been diving into it a little bit more since 2020, actually. Black Lives Matter did something to me, to looking back at my own history and thinking, where do I come from? So that question has been just sort of nagging in my brain for the past couple of years. So I'm really happy that I get to explore it and talk about it with you here.
Yeah, it's awesome. And yeah, I know I have to demystify things. So when I ask people something, as in, would you like to join a podcast? I am basically thinking about the 90% yes, and the 10% no. I try to ignore that. So most of the time, what I'm known for, people know that of me. There is this penguin meme that where the penguin shoves the other penguin in the ice. People see that as me. So this is a demystification of why the majority of the guest speakers are saying yes to this. Also because for me personally, I remember my grandmother gathering us all, having a conversation. And when I'm in Ghana, the same thing, right? Everybody's gathered and listening to each other's stories, whilst here, we only have a one-on-one conversation and not so much more with the community. And I want to bring that back. I also want to highlight the amazing people that I know and within my network, not only in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. So I'll make sure to highlight them as well. And going back to cooking back to our roots, you wanted to share a particular dish from Trinidad, Tobago. Do you mind sharing what it is and why?
Yeah, it's the dish kalaloo. It's a leafy green dish. And I wanted to share it because it connects me. It feels like it connects me back to my roots in a very literal sense. It's what the enslaved people brought to the Caribbean with them. And they had to be so creative in making it because they didn't have anything. They didn't get anything. They didn't go to a grocery store to get anything. So they became really creative with food. And it feels like it connects me back to where I come from. And I do have to admit that I'm not a cook, as you know very well. I can't cook. But it's the story behind it that matters to me.
Yeah, thank you. And Kemo, what about you? What is the dish that you want to bring in?
My dish is called cassava leaves. Back home we call it yoka, but it's the same. It's like I think in South America also it's like really popular, and then I think probably it's like a similar to that.
And why is it pretty popular, right? Yeah.
Because you can use it in so many different ways, right? In Ivory Coast, for instance, they use it like for akeke, which is a big part of like what they eat there. And back home, you can like just, it's just like a really big leaf. You can cut it and then just boil it and then just put a salt or whatever, just simply like that, eat it. Or you can put it in in the stew, or like the leaves. Like use the leaves and cook like this beautiful, amazing, and so me being, overseas, and every time I see that and I eat it, it just like brings me back home, right? And then luckily for me, it was like a lot of people in the community here that know how to cook. And so what do? I become friends with like the amazing cook lady in the kitchen. Because I can't cook it, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I do recognize that. And also to bring in the elephant in the room, I just want to bring it in. So Kemo and I, we are known for, let's say, reheating the jollof war within a certain community, within the Ome community. And the way we go about it is appreciating our roots, right? I know that there is a jollof war with West Africa where I'm only going to vouch for the Ghanaian jollof. I'm just bringing it here, but I do understand that jollof is love. Jollof stands for so many identities. So therefore, West African jollof is definitely the best. I still believe that the Ghanaian jollof should have won.
Should I settle this?
No.
Just make it. I'll
No.
eat it.
That's for season 3. Maybe, hopefully, we can settle the war for season 3. But thank you so much for sharing both your dishes, because these are dishes that I don't think that the majority within the Netherlands, or even within the African diaspora within Europe, are familiar that we had our own dishes that were brought to different countries due to colonial history. And the fact that we are talking about this here in a very light way, but also educational way, brings me so much joy. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The transatlantic slave trade greatly impacted culture and society, including cuisine. Culinary traditions from West Africa were adapted and transformed in the Americas. Callaloo is a leafy vegetable dish in the Caribbean cuisine, originated from West Africa and shares similarities with the Ghanaian palava sauce. Both feature cooked down leafy greens in a flavorful stew, showcasing the diverse use of vegetables in these traditions. Similarly, the cassava leaf stew from Guinea is another notable culinary adaptation. Indigenous people of the Americas were familiar with cassava, also known as yuca. However, enslaved Africans introduced the innovative idea of utilizing cassava leaves in cooking. This led to creating a rich and satisfying stew, often made with meat and served over rice, reflecting traditional practices in Guinea. These adaptations are more than just culinary exchanges. They symbolize the resilience and the creativity of enslaved Africans. Despite being forced into a foreign land, they preserved and adapted their rich culinary heritage, shaping food culture in the Americas. The lasting influences of these West African dishes enriches global cuisine, reflecting our shared history and its ongoing impact on our lives. When you look at your past, Marcia, what is it that you want people to learn from that, growing up in the Netherlands?
Oh, well, particularly when I compare it to growing up in Trinidad and Tobago and how my dad grew up, I think I really want people to know that we have it really good here. And it's in the Dutch mentality to complain. Yeah. I'm half Dutch, so I do it too, just full transparency here. But I feel really blessed to have grown up here, despite I've encountered racism, discrimination, exclusion, all of it. But I think we're a very moderate country, and that has its good sides and its bad sides. But we do have, I feel safe here. I've always felt safe here. And the struggles that I've had, I think would have been so much bigger if my dad had not come to this country, or if my mom and dad decided to raise me in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that I have. On the other hand, I do sometimes, like I said, wonder where I came from. And that's an unanswered question. And it's almost impossible for me to find out because we don't know very much. My dad, I know that I think 3 or 4 generations back, I'm the product of a plantation owner and a plantation worker. So I have so many different sides to me that growing up I never realized. I'd like to explore that more. But all in all, I think I'm very happy that I was here, that I had the opportunities that I've had, because if I were somewhere else, I wouldn't have had them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Kemo, looking back to where you grew up in Guinea, what is it that you want other people to learn about yourself, your past?
I think for me, I feel like one of the most privileged people in the room everywhere I go. And it's really amazing to be aware of that now, because again, like I said in the introduction, I spent half of my life in Guinea, grew up there, and I have all this foundation in terms of culture, understanding who I am, I can say specifically, this is the village my parents came from, like, and then 5 generations after the how. So I have that privilege. And then you move in the West, you move to the US, and then you come in there, and no one cares about your culture. Yeah. In fact, they see your culture as an inferior culture. Yeah. Yeah. And so you have to go through that, and they want you to assimilate. And then for you to fit in, and you have to assimilate. And so you go through that journey. And so where I am now, I'm like, I'm a bicultural. What that means is that I'm 100% American. I spend my time there. I embrace the culture. I have like that whole, I understand the system. I speak the language. I understand I have a huge community there. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I have. That's a privilege that I have. But at the same time, I understand my culture back home. So those are the two cultures that I have cultural references to. My American colleague, when they go to Guinea, they have even Africa, they would have to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. So I have like a competitive advantage on them from that point. Yeah. Right? But at the same time, if you take my Guinea counterpart and then bring them to the US, they have to go through like these 20 plus years adaptation and then integration and all that. And so for me, I already have that. And so in my mindset, I'm like, this is like really amazing. Yeah. And it took me years to get here because I know for a fact no culture is better than another. Yeah. Culture is a culture. It's a way of life of the people. So something we have back home, like there's so many cultural things. Like for instance, the way we look at time and the way you look at time here is completely different.
You're mentioning that.
Right? Yeah. And the way we have a conversation,
true.
The way we have a meeting here,
yeah.
In the Netherlands and usually in the West, and the way the meeting happened back home is completely different, mm-hmm. right? The communication, one is oral communication, and the other one is more like focused on the written. Mm-hmm. If something is not written, it didn't happen. Sure. And so like all understanding this, I'm like, man, I have the best of both worlds.
And we already have an advantage that the three of us all are dealing with different cultures where we learn to adapt or understand the different cultures. And I sometimes feel like it's lacking when other people, Western people, are traveling abroad, that people should always accustom to their culture. But I am both. I'm not only Dutch, I'm Ghanaian. I'm respectful for the African diaspora, but I also understand that there are Western norms and cultures. And we already have that from day one, the way that we were raised. We already have that. What is it that you want other people to learn from that as well?
I think what I want people to learn from that is like there is a power of first thinking that your culture is no culture is better than the other. So if you're a Westerner and you go into Africa, your whole life you've been told that your culture is better.
Yeah.
So you go in there with that mindset, like you should be lucky to be here, look at all these things, and you go in there. So automatically you go in there. But at the same time, you go back home, in Africa, for example, it's the same thing with South America, like the so-called third world country, but instead of calling the majority country.
Exactly.
So you go to these majority countries, right? And then you already have this preconceived mindset. Yeah. And so you go in there and they also treat you that way, right? So they also have this superiority. So you are almost in the disadvantage position because you do not get to like really integrate yourself, involve yourself and understand the culture. You're like a superficial above, right? And I think that's what I want people to understand, whatever side of the aisle you are, right? If you're on that side of the aisle, like Westerners that go there and like really roll their sleeve and then involve the culture, understand the language, their mindset is completely different. I mean, we see them, right? But unfortunately, most of them don't. Yeah. And then to the other side too, like some people come here and they're like, I'm completely African. I'm not, no, you here, this is an opportunity. Embrace the culture, understand it, take it, absorb it, and then you become better.
Yeah.
So that for me, like that's the biggest takeaway. Like if you are anywhere you are, if you have the opportunity to learn a different culture, God, learn it. And it make you, before you come in, if you're here and you learn that culture, you're gonna be here as a human being.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. West Africa. West Africa is a culturally rich and historically significant region, has been the birthplace of many civilizations and empires from the ancient Ghana to the Mali to Songhai empires. Its diversity in ethnic groups, languages, traditions, and natural resources is unparalleled. However, this history also has intertwined with the tragic narrative of the transatlantic slave trade, which saw the Dutch as major players from the late 16th to the early 19th century. The Dutch West India Company monopolized trade routes around the West African coast and across the Atlantic, transporting enslaved Africans to the Americas in appalling conditions. Dutch colonies like Suriname and the Dutch Antilles were built on forced labor producing commodities like sugar and coffee. This dark history impacted West Africa and the African diaspora communities and its socio-economic landscape. Dutch forts on the Ghanaian coast serve as a reminder of this past. Despite a harrowing history, West Africa has shown immense resilience and vitality. Its people have preserved their rich cultural heritage, influencing global music, art, literature, and cuisine. And now back to you, Dr. Marcia Goddard. I didn't address that title, but there's a reason why I'm addressing it now, because you are, you have a PhD in neuroscience, where I think you were not the first person who I know of a PhD, but the few people who are from the African descent within the Netherlands, which I know that has a PhD, and I was mesmerized by that. Mesmerized also the way you talk about neuroscience, and I just want to also get to know the present, Marcia. What is it that you want other people to learn about the present?
About who I am now?
Yeah.
I think I spent my entire life fitting in wherever I was. Like the code switching thing is not foreign to me. I've heard many times people say things about a certain group and then be like, oh, I don't mean you.
Yeah.
You do mean me.
Yeah.
I think that is what I want people to know, that it is my background. And yes, I grew up here. I grew up around Amsterdam. Yes, I'm very, very Dutch, but I no longer want to deny the fact that there is another side of me and that needs to be respected as well. And I am now completely myself. And I wasn't before. I don't want to catastrophize or anything. It wasn't really dramatic. I had a fine childhood, but I did deny a part of me. So I am a woman of color. And I think maybe part of it came from me as well, in the sense that I've struggled with that because I'm light-skinned. Yeah. Like my hair is sort of like, people always like, are you Moroccan? Are you from the Dutch end? Where are you from? That is a really interesting question to get just in general. Where are you from? Yeah. But I think that has led to me sometimes being like, okay, I'm not really sure where I'm from, but I'm me. Yeah. And I have both of those things. And I am of African descent. And that's a big step for me to say, because I've never really honored that connection.
So Kemo, listening to what Marcia just shared right now, I know that you have created, together with your Olmec people, created a beautiful community platform where bicultural people can join. What is it that you want them to take away from what you're doing at the moment, in the present?
Yeah, my biggest message to them is like a bicultural identity is superpower. It's a competitive advantage. Yeah. The sooner you realize that, the more powerful you become. Because the reason I use the powerful, because I think, just the example that you say like, this is who I am, and I'm not denying that part of my, in fact, that's a huge part, and it's like a really powerful part. And I think bicultural identity, and then I know for a fact they are the future leaders because of this identity, that this ability to navigate and then integrate these two cultures, and then they become bridge between the cultures, because you understand both of them and then you empathize with them, right? And so it gives you all this thing that I call the bicultural competencies, right? What that is like being able to empathy, right? Cultural intelligence. Like when you walk in the room and you know how Africans operate, you automatically there. Yeah. And you go to the Dutch conference and Dutch meeting and Dutch space, you know how it operates. So So those things, you become the bridge between two society. And if our leaders are this way, they can understand these two cultures. You don't have to like vilify the society anymore. So that's what bicultural, like for me, knowing that they have this competitive advantage, knowing they have this superpower. And then the idea is like, just tell them that. Like just create that awareness and tell them like, this is what it is. And in addition to that, and then you kind of show them what is this bicultural competencies, like this creativity, this innovation that comes with it, right? And so once you do that, really make the society a better place because you turn them into future leaders. And so that's my message. And I feel like this is literally my calling of turning biculturals into future leaders. Yeah. Because our society will become a better place because of that.
I love that. And also with both of you rewriting a different narrative, because the narrative, the way that I grew up, the narrative was that being Black, especially being African in the Netherlands, it wasn't hip as it is right now, where I was seen as not second class, but third class citizen. And what I know, and I just want to share it, is my grandmother was a Ghanaian princess. She comes from royalty. And the fact that I was also investigating my own history, investigating in doing research for this program, I come from royalty. So many other people come from royalty, but along the line, we forget that. Along the line, our stories have been diminished, erased, destroyed. And I want us to reclaim our superpower as well, that we come from royalty. So that means that we raise our head up, walk straight, walk high with pride, because that's who we are. And that's the message that I want to bring in for today as well. Yeah.
It's our superpower.
Yeah.
We don't even need, you don't need just to say it's a superpower. You need to understand why it's a superpower. Yeah. And so we still need to do that work. Right, you need to be in space. Again, it's bringing us back why we need to have this conversation. Because if you're not in this space, you're on the journey. I'm on the journey. We all on these journeys. That's why I call it bicultural identity, because identity is a journey. Yeah. We're all in this journey, and then you have to discover these things so you can really internalize it. And for me, like I'm at that point where I do not care what the external people have to say. Yeah. They have no idea who I am. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that I don't internalize that. Yeah. Right?
That's a very valid point because being the only one in the room, whether it's in the workplace or whatever situation, when you are the only one, it's very easy to internalize what somebody else is saying or what the majority is saying about you, because if so many people are saying it, it must be true. But that's not our story.
You know what came to mind for me as you were saying that? Because usually I come from royalty, and it just immediately made me think, and people are like, you're so lucky to be here. Ooh. You should be grateful that you're here. Yeah. It relates to like the third world, like the way we look at culture just in general is this is superior, it's all, I mean, there's more money here, maybe, I guess, but it has nothing to do with being superior or inferior. So in essence, it really should be, they're lucky to have you here.
True.
That was my whole mindset when I work in the corporate. I was, a lot of the time, the only Black person in the room. And my mindset was like, well, you guys so lucky to have me here. I'm a Black person in the room, so you have no understanding of my situation. I'm a migrant from Africa. You have no understanding of my situation. Like I go over the list, instead of looking at it as a disadvantage, I'm like, you guys have no idea. So you better come to me and then ask me. And if you don't, I understand your culture. I'm here to understand so it's completely, for me, I always seen it that way, like in my journey now as an advantage. And also like understanding your story, right? For me, you say like a royalty. Me, I've been building community. I love building community. That's part of, like, one day I went back home. I was telling my brother, explaining to him, right, what I'm doing in Omeka and how that's the legacy of my parents, because we grew up seeing them build community. And it's like, wait, let me tell you something. Your dad's dad, like all the way to 4th generation, these men came in and then built a village and then invited people around because he was like this. And they told the story, and then the village started growing, and then his kids took over and made a bigger place. And so your dad, you know only your dad, but he's not the one that started the community building. So and then I'm like, oh, thank you. Or now like my level of confidence in my identity just went up. Like this has been a generational thing.
Yeah.
So like when you do this discovery about yourself, and I come to the, to the western part of my life, and I'm like, you have no idea who I am.
True.
So you can either have a conversation with me, and then I'll tell you, me sharing my story with you would elevate you.
Yeah.
Right? You can do that, and if you say no to that, you are missing the opportunity and elevating yourself as a human being.
Yeah.
That's my way of seeing it, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the final question, and that is, what is the message that you have for the future, especially with what's happening in the Netherlands? The Netherlands is very progressive, or let's say what's happening in Europe, where Europe is progressive in such an extent, but when you look at the African diaspora, we are still dealing with racism. We are still dealing with discrimination. What is the message that you have for them?
For the community?
Yeah.
I think I want to make sure, like, because I'm very optimistic by nature, and then being the work that I'm doing in the bicultural community and surrounding myself with change maker, with like really forward thinking in the community, very successful in that space. Not like professionally, but personally, I surround myself with that, and so I have that lens on, and that really create this positive thing, right? And I think for me, my message to the community is that for the past 400 or 500 years, no one came to change our situation. And then that's not going to happen in the next 500 years. It is our opportunity right now to change that. And the way we do that is to find like-minded people, to find positive-minded people that have a shared experience, shared values. Not only like to say, oh, I'm connecting with this because you're African descent, or like you're Black, but let's go a little bit beyond that. Connect with people that have a shared experience, shared value, shared vision. You are in the same place in your journey. When you do that, you don't have to deal with the noises. You're dealing like, man, how do we move forward?
Yeah, exactly.
And once we start doing that, like we start tapping into our superpower, and then we start making the society a better place. And for me, that's the positive thing. And I think right now where we are with the technology, the proliferation in like technology, the cultural movement that's changing, there's like a lot of changes happening. If we can grasp that opportunity and come together as a community, we will create a change that we like never imagined is possible. Yeah. That's one. And I think the second thing is, I didn't realize this until I started like community building and in this space. Like when I work in the corporate, I felt like so small. Like I felt like so small, and I felt like not values at all, like irrespective of like how successful I was. But like now the work that I'm doing, I'm like, I woke up every day, I'm like, man, I'm so privileged that I'm doing something that's gonna change the society for the better. And that is amazing. And that wasn't anything complicated. Anybody can do it. You just need to like surround yourself with the right set of people that have that mindset, and you see yourself contributing, making the society a better place. True. Yeah, so that's my story.
I'm glad to be in your presence.
You are one of those people that I surround myself. Like, give me this positive mindset. So thank you.
Thank you as well. Marcia.
You're not gonna like me saying this, but there's a quote by Lewis Hamilton.
Okay, bring it on. Bring it on.
It's actually a really good one. It's not Formula One related. He once said, to embrace your differences, to understand your potential. I think that really resonated with me, because that, for me, I do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. That's what that's all about. But our brains try to make sense of reality as best as they can. But it's always going to be our truth, right? Each individual person, based on their own biases, has their own truth. There's a name for it, experience bias. Yeah. We all see our truth as the truth. Yeah. And I think if we want to progress when it comes to systemic racism, breaking through biases, equality, we have to acknowledge that firstly. The first step is to acknowledge the fact that we have these biases and to also acknowledge that there is no such thing as the truth. We here in the Netherlands, we're taught history from a very white perspective.
Yeah.
And the white savior complex is kind of built into our narrative as we grow up. That's one side of things, and it has brought our country many things. But I think progress is acknowledging the fact that there is another side to it, and they're not the bad people, or you didn't come to save them. No, it's much more nuanced than that. So two things that seemingly contradict can both be true.
Yeah.
And if we can acknowledge that, then we can truly start embracing differences, and we can really take steps to get rid of these systemic issues that we have in our society. And our talents, our bicultural backgrounds, and the skills that brings can really come to flourish, which is good for the country as well.
Yeah. I love that. I love everything what you both shared. And all I can say is that I want us all to amplify empathy, because from when you activate the experience from an empathic level, you learn to understand, to walk a mile in my shoes and understand the challenges that I am facing, whereas you can look at your privilege, your superpowers to lower the barriers, right? So this whole program, it's my way of sharing the different narratives, but also for me to share a way how we can amplify empathy by sharing each other's stories, talking about amazing high potential people in the Netherlands who are from the African diaspora, because there is a different narrative being told about us, which I don't relate to. So thank you, both of you, for blessing this episode, but also for making it a joy to have this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely a pleasure.